Hey everyone, Clio here, and it's time to dive into the end of the year book tag. I don't think I've done this book tag before because I usually find it to be way too late in the year when I think of doing this one, and I'm probably a bit late to the party as well because this is going to be coming out on like the 15th of November or something like that, so yeah. Probably not the best timing wise, but I still wanted to do it because I do think it has some interesting questions to it, and so it's also kind of like a lead in to my December footage, which will be going into some of these topics a little bit more. So this is a book tag that was originally created by Ariel Bissett. I will link her video down below, and you will probably see this video going around BookTube a whole lot at this point. I've seen a whole lot of examples over the past few weeks of people taking this tag. But so the first question in this tag is whether there are still any sort of books that you have started but you still need to finish. So for this question I'm only going to answer with like books that I feel like I haven't been actively reading at the point, so I'm not going to be going into my current reads, which of course I also need to finish. But so there are some books that I've started at some point and that I need to continue with, that I want to finish before the end of the year. First one I'll mention is one that always was intended to just be finished in December, but I am very much behind on that one, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. So this is a huge classic, it's over 1000 pages, and I was reading this along with Ashley, I think, from the Bookish Realm, and so we are reading a chunk of this every single month, and I was on track in the second month of this read along, but yeah, then I just stopped reading, or I stopped really focusing, because I am a little bit past that mark, but I do think I need to start again at this second month mark because I've forgotten everything that was happening in between there. So I do have quite a chunk of this book that I still need to get through. So I am like 340 pages into a more than 1000 page book, so it is definitely still my intention. I don't know whether in November I'll actually have time to catch up a little bit, so this is definitely going to be a project for December, but I have definitely enjoyed the book so far while I was reading for it, but it just, because I never put it on my TBR because I was never going to finish it, it also kind of slipped my mind, and I was always like focused on finishing as much books as possible. So December I definitely want to give some more attention to this one because I have been enjoying it, and who knows, it might actually end up on like my top list of the year. Second book that I'm supposedly reading, but I will say I only read 25 pages of this at the time. So while I officially started reading it, I really didn't get any sort of leeway in this one, and that is Congo by David van Rijbroek. So this is a non-fiction book about Congo, mainly about the colonial period, I think, though it does go past that, and I don't know whether it potentially also starts earlier than that. You can see I'm really like nowhere in this book. But so this was a huge bestseller when it came out in Belgium, I think some 10 years ago or something, and definitely with the debate being like sparked again about the figure of Leopold II and whether we should remove all of his statues or not. I definitely want to dive into that history a little bit more because it's definitely a history that even in my time at school we were basically taught almost nothing about this page in our history. We were kind of taught about it, which is already more than I can say for the generation of my parents, for example, but what we were taught, I'm pretty convinced will probably have still been a very slim version of what actually took place there. So I'm hoping that this book can give me a little bit more of an insight into our colonial past and, you know, the kind of the direction that the country went into after we decolonized the region. So very much still eager to read this one. It is a chunker, so I think it's for December, and alongside with The Count of Monte Cristo, which is also a whole lot of pages, this might just be the extent of my December, but I hope not, because I still have a couple of other books that I also need to get to. Another book that I'm possibly still in the middle of, though like it is very recent, but I do think that it's been like a week without me reading anything in it, is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, which is a mystery thriller that I started like in the week leading up to Halloween because I wanted to try reading seasonally, but I really am not a mystery thriller reader, and I've gotten like 150 pages into the book, and my pace with this is just so slow. I think I will definitely try to pick it up again today, but usually I just read like 20 pages a day in this one, and that's kind of my max with it, so we'll see what happens with this one. Whether I end up DNFing it because I don't really have enough of an interest, or whether I stick true with it, who knows. Second question is whether you have any autumnal books that can transition you into the end of the year. I don't necessarily consider myself a seasonal reader. I don't really associate certain books with certain seasons. I have definitely been enjoying reading a lot of fantasy at this point, and the end of the year is traditionally a fantasy heavy period in terms of publications, so perhaps fantasy can transition me into this season, but I definitely am not somebody who like keeps certain books for certain times of a year. I think if I have any sort of associations, it'll probably be more like December. The December month has certain feelings to me. So for example, a Charles Dickens to me feels perfect for December, and a book that I'm also going to mention later also feels like it would be a very good December book. But that's basically just that sort of comfort and coziness of the dark evenings and of the Christmas atmosphere that's making me say that. Apart from that, I really don't have any sort of inclination. For example, I don't read light books in summer as some people might associate with summer, so that question really for me doesn't really have an answer, because that's just really not the way that I read my books. Next question is whether there's still a book that you are waiting for, and absolutely I'm still waiting for something. I'm not waiting for this book, but I'm waiting for its sequel. So this is Oathbringer, the third book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and so a few days after this video will go live, the next book in the series, Rhythm of War, will be coming out. There's also a novella that's part of the Stormlight Archive that's also coming out around this time. It's available already to people who kind of backed the Kickstarter campaign, but I think Brandon Sanderson has said it will be out as an ebook to purchase somewhere in the coming days, so possibly already available at the time that this video is going to be live, which I will link down below if it is the case. But so yeah, I'm very much looking forward to diving into this one. I'm currently rereading Oathbringer in order to prepare for the publication of Rhythm of War, and I will have hopefully planned this out well in advance in a way that I can kind of move straight into Rhythm of War after finishing Oathbringer. Next question is, which are 3 books that you still want to complete by the end of the year? I'm going to answer that with some books that I haven't answered yet, because definitely I still need to finish Count of Monte Cristo, hopefully Congo, definitely need to finish Rhythm of War, but that probably won't be any sort of an effort. Definitely do have a couple of read-alongs that I'm still taking part of that will also count for like I need to finish them. So first one that is kind of like on my high priority, I do still want to finish it this year, is The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin, which is the third book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I started the first book of this, I think in March or something like that, and I would be very happy to kind of break from tradition and finish the series in its entirety in 1 year. So I would hopefully still get around to this one, and then I can spend 2021 reading another one of her series, or another one, or like her latest release, which is the first book in the series. So I've definitely, the way things are going, I'm definitely expecting to be reading more of her books in the future, because I'm definitely enjoying this one a whole lot. Next up is one of those books that I feel will be good for December, and that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is the sequel to Before the Coffee Gets Cold, the original book, which I read in January, I think. I think this was part of my challenge of reading all of my books that were under 200 pages, and so this one is also a very thin one, so in that sense perfect for this sort of challenge of still reading it before this year is over. But I definitely do want to read it in December, because I do definitely think that Before the Coffee Gets Cold had this beautiful atmosphere to it, of this sort of cozy cafe setting where you get to know a lot of the people working there, a lot of the people frequenting this place, and I just want to be back into that sort of like atmosphere within the month of December. This is a time travel novel, but it's very different from other time travel novels, because the focus isn't on some sort of a like grand adventure to try and prevent something from happening, because within this cafe you can travel back in time, but you cannot change anything about the present. So throughout these stories that we'll be getting in this one and that we got in the original, kind of looking at why would you travel back in time if you know that it won't have an impact on the present, you know, what are some of the motivations that these people have. And then the final one that I'm going to be putting on, as I want to finish this before the end of the year, is a book that I've put on my TBR so many times this year that I definitely do want to get to it before 2021. I don't want the guilt of having put it like 4 times on my TBR, maybe even 5 times, and still not finishing it this year, and that is Weather by Jenny Offel. So this, I at this point I don't even know too well what it's about. It is about this person who, I think she works in a library, and she's kind of hired to come up with answers to all sorts of questions, and so she needs to do research in all sorts of things. But I think it's mainly going to be focused on climate change, and that is going to give us a very bleak perspective on our future. Still haven't read this. I've talked about this book so many times, and it's short as well, but you know, it seems to always be one of the books that stays on my TBR, and because I can never finish my TBR because it's a pile of possibilities, it's more books than I can get to in a month, I always end up pushing this one back, so I'm very much hoping that I will still be able to pick it up this year. Next up, the next question is there a book that can still shock you and become your favorite read of 2020, not 2021, not yet there? And I will say that, like, I don't have an overwhelming excitement about like one of the books that I read this year, where I feel like nothing can top that, the way that I had last year with Lanny, even though last year I had a whole lot of a moral debate between two books that I had absolutely loved. There are books that I've absolutely loved this year, but I also don't think that nothing could equal that or stand above it. But I'm also not expecting that to be a book that will shock me. If there's gonna be something that I like more, it's gonna be like Rhythm of War, for example. But Rhythm of War, I think, because I've loved every book in this series, I would never place as my highest book of the year. So in that sense, maybe it can still shock me if it turns out to be so much better than I expect it to be, but I'm already expecting quite a lot. Maybe The Count of Monte Cristo, I've definitely been enjoying that quite a lot, so maybe The Count of Monte Cristo can prove itself if it ends up delivering on a like beautiful, well-rounded story within 1000 pages. Though I will say that I definitely think that it can win my heart, but it's probably not going to win the best book, you know. I absolutely loved War and Peace, which is another big chunker of a classic, but I definitely do think that its length wasn't necessarily merited throughout, that there definitely are some passages that could be skipped out of it, and so while it's near and dear to my heart, I didn't make it my best book of 2019, for example, and I'm also expecting that to be the case with Count of Monte Cristo, where I'm hoping that I will absolutely love it, but that there will be certain things about it that I find lacking, which means that I won't place it as my best book. Apart from that, who knows, maybe there are definitely books that could do it. The Stone Sky, if it ends up wrapping up this series, could definitely surprise me. The entire series I've absolutely loved so far, and it definitely has some place within that list. So I don't really have a definitive list yet. There are two books that I've definitely been kind of blown away by when I read them that are currently kind of at my top, but we'll see what ends up happening. And then the final question for this tag is whether you already made some reading plans for 2021. And yes, I've already made some reading plans. I will definitely have a video about that coming out in December, so definitely do look forward to that. What can I already say? I definitely think that one of my goals for 2021, which is a continuation of my goal for 2020, is reducing the amount of unread books on my shelf, and as a consequence also reducing the amount of books that I buy. I want to hopefully be using my library a little bit more. My goal is actually to reach a 0 TBR, to be able to read every single book on my shelves behind me. But I don't necessarily think that that is the goal for 2021 yet. That would be like, I know that that's not going to happen. That would basically mean that every single book that I read in 2021 would be a book off of those shelves, and I don't want to make that commitment, because I definitely also want to make some room for arcs or for new releases, or for books, you know, that I hear so much about in the course of 2021 that I also want to figure out what my opinion is about those books. So I definitely won't make the commitment of only reading those books in 2021, so I definitely don't think that TBR 0 is manageable within 2021, but it's definitely still a goal that I'm striving for and that I will be kind of moving towards within 2021. But so, as I said, I'm gonna have a full video out about this, because there are definitely also some other goals that I have in 2021, and I'll probably also be going a little bit more specific into what my exact goal is in terms of my physical TBR reduction in 2021. But so these were all of the questions. I hope you enjoyed. I'm definitely looking forward to the end of the year. I'm already in this festive mood, as you can tell, and so I'm going to be leaving you guys, because clearly I have a lot of books that I still need to read before the end of the year. See you guys.